For
Welcome to the Are Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professor. The Draft Professor is a group of podcasters bringing you daily draft podcasts and is home to the only dynamic mock draft simulator which allows fans to mock draft against other fans. The Draft Professor simulator features a first-round challenge, 5 unique one-round drafts. The Draft Professor simulator features a second-round challenge, 10 unique 2-round drafts. All mock drafts are always picking against the fans and draft analysts which use the simulator. Every mock, every pick, every time. The Draft Professor also features ranked players functionality, where you can rank your favorite players at every position. Optionally, you can add tiers to your rankings to show what round you have the players graded in. The Draft Professor also features draft a team functionality, which allows users to snake draft a team of 22 players to demonstrate your my guys, compare player strengths, and discuss draft prospects in a way no other mock draft simulator can. Thank you for tuning in to the Are Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. This episode will begin shortly. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Are Relevant Wednesday evening edition. We are live with EJ and Durst. And as you guys were talking, like right before the podcast, you two haven't met before, have you?
no,
Yeah, I've seen you. I've seen you on some of these shows and seen you on Twitter, but I have not had a chance. Had the pleasure.
haven't had the pleasure. First time for everything. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. So this should be a lot of fun because as I was putting the graphics together, I could tell that we have some unique wide receiver rankings. I felt bad that Ty Felton wasn't on either of them, but that's okay because it's your boards, right? But EJ, how have you been the last week?
I've been good. Hanging in there. I actually had one of my what's it called? Your wisdom teeth come in. That's not fun. That is not fun at all. So I'm working through that, but I'm very likely to be available next week.
So I had my wisdom teeth taken out spring break in my senior year of high school.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was my spring break. So and that was a long time ago.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a late bloomer because I'm 42 and I'm still growing teeth. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah. And Durst, I think this is what, your second or third podcast with us?
I think mine before.
Okay. We're moving on.
Yeah, number 4. Yeah, we done corner, defensive tackle, tight end, and now wide receiver.
Fantastic. So we're going to go through some big boards, and I will share it with the audience now because I've been staring at it, just haven't put it on the podcast yet. Wow. So I can read that clearly here, but as I'm looking at it on the podcast, I don't know how clear that is to everybody out there. But you both have the same wide receiver 1. Durst, why do you have Tet McMillan at wide receiver 1?
Well, I mean, he started off my summer scouting as a wide receiver 3. I actually didn't really consider myself to be a huge fan of him, but then this was a little bit of a disappointing class on the top end. So Teteroa McMillan is he's a big target. He can win at the catch point. He's to me, he's not an explosive athlete as much as he's a smooth athlete. So like some people will compare him to Mike Williams. I have a hard time kind of getting to that point. I think Mike Williams is a little bit more physical, almost violent at the catch point. I don't feel like Teteroa is quite there. I could buy a little bit more to the Drake London comp. My comp for him is T. Higgins. And of course, T. Higgins just got paid. But T. Higgins is probably more of a 22nd to 33rd best wide receiver in the NFL. I think that's kind of how I see Teteroa in this class. But there's not too many people that I think can be a wide receiver 1 in this class. And I think he's one of the few that can.
So EJ, you have McMillan as your top wide receiver. What did he do to earn that spot?
It's a combination of the size and partially the traits and his projection into the next level based on the rest of these guys. Like, first off, like these guys, as my cat invades the show, these guys, all of these guys I would put them behind Roma Dunze and Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harris. I would put them in a tier below all of those guys from last year. So these guys, I look at this entire class as more complementary receivers, guys that add to a room, not necessarily guys that won't be successful. Because I mean, I see 1,000-yard receivers all up and down this board, but I don't believe they're the class of those top three guys from last year. Teterow and McMillan specifically, I see a receiver that translates to a volume catcher at the next level. It was a thing on Twitter earlier this week about what exactly Teterow and McMillan is. Like, is he your basic boundary X receiver? I don't believe he's that. I don't believe you should put him at that standard X receiver position and leave him there, because I mean, he didn't even do that at Arizona. They moved him around. They give him he runs his routes from different positions, which works best for him. I think two of his best traits, the traits that stand out for him, is his run after the catch ability at that size, which is 6'4", 218, and then his ability in contested catch situations, more so in the red zone, where the contested catch situations he benefits from mostly. With that's a solid package to add to any wide receiver room. I think he translates to I guess I would say I want him moving around in the formation. I don't want him at X receiver all the time. I like him as a big slot. You can move him around. He's going to catch the ball. He's got good play speed. I don't care about what he runs at the 40 or at his pro day or whatever that. He's got good play speed. When you see him catch the ball, you see him operate at a different speed from before he caught the ball. I know that some of that is tempoing routes, but when you see him with the ball in his hands, he's moving at a faster pace. So I look at that and I see a receiver that immediately translates into a volume catcher, a guy that can get you tough yards after the catch, a chain mover, and a red zone threat.
Okay, and and I guess before we move on to wide receiver 2, one of the things that I thought was interesting, Durst, that you said that I think needs more emphasis. The purpose of the draft is to draft starters. You shouldn't expect your draft picks to be all pros. So I liked how you were explaining, Durst, that you're looking at like the players on this list. You're looking for like the 32nd best wide receiver in the league. You're not necessarily, like EJ pointed out, you're not going to find a Malik Neighbors who might be a top 10 wide receiver, right? You're not necessarily looking for an all-pro. You're looking for a guy that can fill out the room. And I thought when you made that point, Durst, that resonated with me. I think that's a message that needs to be said more. So I just wanted to kind of give you a shout out there. EJ, you have Matthew Golden as wide receiver 2. What did Golden do to deserve that ranking?
He did a little bit of everything. I look for what I like about receivers. Well, what I look for in receivers is, can you be a threat at all three levels of the field? Can you? And I'm big on run after the catch. Can you get yards after you've made the catch? Matthew Golden checks those boxes. Like when you watch his Texas tape, he is 5'11", 191. But he runs his routes. You can give him a screen or you can give him a quick slant. He's going to get yards after the catch at that. The way he runs his routes with tempo and pace, that gets him natural separation at the short to intermediate route. So you got your backside digs, your outs, and all of that. that's the intermediate route. He can do those, and then he's got the speed to get over top of a defender and stack him, and then make the big play. So however you want to slice it, he can get open. I look for that type of versatility in my receivers where they can do a little bit of everything on the field. All you got to do is just get the ball to him. And that's pretty much what Matthew Golden is as a player. As far as the downside, I think he's not the biggest guy in the world, but I think he has enough play strength and enough footwork and technique to get away from these bigger corners that's going to try to bully him. So pretty much I see Matthew Golden. I see a one of the more complete packages at the wide receiver position.
Good. So Durst, you have Golden as your wide receiver 2, and you have him in the same tier as Burden, but ahead of Burden. So talk about Golden, and then when you're finished with that, explain why you have him higher than Burden.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think Golden is the most complete receiver in the draft. So even I had Tedero McMillian as my number 1. There's some upside with the size and some of the uniqueness of his frame. But I do think that Golden's the most complete player or complete wide receiver in the draft. His routes and separation, I consider him to be a 3-level threat. His hands and ball skills, speed and athleticism, good enough size. He can play the Z, he can play the slot. He even got some kick return ability. My red flag with him was simply his production, which wasn't great either at Houston or at Texas until maybe mid-season. But he came through in the playoffs, so he really showed that clutch factor in the playoffs as well. So he is in my wide receiver 2, but I probably consider him more on the lines of like a Ladd McConkey. Matthew Golden, tested a little bit faster than McConkey did, but I think his play speed is about the same. They're really both really good as intermediate separators and intermediate routes, but they both have some ability to play, to be a deep threat as well as taking some short passes. Then when we get to Burden, Burden is more of a slot guy. He was actually my preseason wide receiver 1. His projection fell off a lot. A lot of people think it's mainly because of the quarterback and the play calling, but he's primarily a slot guy. He's got the DJ Moore, kind of body. A lot of people compare him to Deebo Samuel in terms of his play style because he's so physical. He's probably the only one that deserves the DJ Moore the Deebo Samuel comp. Everybody, we try to give him a comp to Deebo Samuel, find a receiver every year. He's probably the only one that really deserves that label. But he's very physical at the catch point, very physical after the catch point. My concerns with him is I've got tape of him being covered by linebackers. I got tape of him being covered by safeties. I'm not too sure if that's a concern that I would knock him down, past my wide receiver 3-4, but he's really more of like in the tier of Emeka Egbuka, but I think he's got a little bit more juice to him, so a little bit more speed, a little bit more power to his game.
Cool. So EJ, you have Luther Burden as wide receiver 3.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like about Burden that you have him that high?
I see the role, I see the projection for it, and I see the upside. I wasn't in love with how Missouri used him this season. I think they left a lot of meat on the bone with him with their game plan for him. But as far as him as a player, I think immediately year 1, whoever drafts him should pull up tape of what the Chiefs did with Rashee Rice. He can do all of that immediately year 1. That because one of his strong suits is his play strength and his run after the catch ability. I mean, this guy is special. I believe 2 receivers in this class are special after the catch. That's him, and that's another guy we're going to talk about later on. With Burden, he's a guy he can catch a slant and take it to the house. He can do that. He can, I think he has some route savvy. I think he could use some upside, some development with those routes. Part of that is how Missouri used him. They didn't put him in a position to where he could run his full route tree, I believe. I think he tracks the ball well downfield. I think that makes him a deep threat. He is just, I think he is just, an immediate transition to the next level as a slot receiver, and then you can bounce him outside eventually as well. But I see him another one. I see him being a volume catcher at the league. When say like he's number 3 in the progression, and your first 2 guys aren't open, quarterback is going to find Luther Burden right there in the middle of the field, and he's going to get you an extra 10 yards. And not many receivers can do that. So I think that's why I got him this high.
Cool. So, Durst, you have Emeka Egbuka as wide receiver 4. So talk about Egbuka. Talk about maybe why you have him slightly behind Burden, but in the same tier. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, Abuka's got a little bit more of a complete resume, being a 4th-year player. Real quick on Burden, as a freshman, he actually played primarily as an outside receiver. Of course, he doubled his production once they got put in the slot. So I do think that he fits best in the slot. But I do think that both of these at least have some potential to move around, play a little bit of Z, take advantage of some different matchups. But so back to Abuka. So, a very complete resume as a 4th-year player. He had a breakout sophomore year that was every bit as good as Burden's and Tetairoa McMillan's sophomore year. I don't think his play speed is great. I actually went back the other day and started looking at his sophomore tape when he played a little bit more snaps as an outside receiver. I think he's got the skill. I think he's got the route running acumen, but I don't think he's just maybe not fast or twitchy enough to consistently beat NFL corners on the outside. As a slot, I think both of these guys are really good. I think Burden's got a little bit more juice after the catch, maybe a little bit more physicality to him. But I think that Egbuka is a worker bee mentality. I love him in condensed formations. I think all these teams that want to run a bunch of condensed formations, he might be the wide receiver 1. I think he might be the best blocking receiver in the class. There's another guy a little further down the list that is right up there with him. But my main concern with him is that the comps I commonly hear, most of which I agree with, maybe it's Keenan Allen, maybe it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe it's Robert Woods. The only one that really got taken in the first round was Jackson Smith-Njigba, his former teammate. So I think this guy actually might be more of a second-round guy, but top of the second round. Now, I think all these guys, the guys I mentioned before, in a redraft, they might be, they're definitely first-round guys, but they never actually go in the first round in actual drafts. It's only in hindsight that, we should have taken this guy. So I'm curious to see if a team's going to bite on him, but I feel like his profile usually is more of a beginning of the second round kind of guy versus a first-round kind of guy. But I really like his abilities, though.
Cool. And I think part of what would also play into that, Durst, is that if we look at, let's say, who the bottom 8 teams in the draft are, meaning the playoff teams, and we would have to ask ourselves, is Egbuka the wide receiver that a playoff team would want to draft? Meaning is that what would make the Chiefs receiver room better? Or is that what would make the Ravens receiver room better? Because, for example, Egbuka in Buffalo is a duplicate skill set. So I don't see that as the right fit. Even if we like the player, the fit to the team isn't right. And you can even say the same thing with Philadelphia, right? I doubt Philadelphia would be going wide receiver in round 1. Yeah. So to your point about would he go round 1 or round 2, you would have to say, is he a top 24 player? And if we're saying, we're not ready for Egbuka in the top 24, you have to look at that tier of teams and say, I do think him dropping to early round 2 is closer to reality, like a team like the Titans.
I love him to the Jaguars. I think, working the opposite of Brian Thomas, very completely different complementary skill set.
Yes. And like EJ, I have been looking forward to hearing about Jalen Noel as wide receiver 4.
Yes.
Go for it. Pound the table. Tell us why.
It's no reason why. I mean, athletically, he's right up there with any one of these guys. We're talking about a high school sprinter and high jump. Now, what that means is those guys, when they train for sprinting and all that, they got long strides and they got loose hips. And that's exactly what you see with Jalen Noel. So he's every bit the athlete as any wide receiver in this class. Now, as far as his game goes, he's 5'10", 194. That's solid. You know, he's not the tallest guy in the world. Solid weight. I don't have a problem with either. What I see him as a slot or a movement Z, whereas he can work his routes out of the slot. He has violent change of direction, like laterally change of direction. What that does is that gives him his separation at the top of his route stems. And when I say violent separation, you watch violent change of direction. I mean, when you watch Trey Harris and watch him change of direction, and then that's average change of direction. You watch Jalen Noel and you watch him move side to side, you see violent change of direction. You watch Isaiah Bond, violent change of direction. This guy, he gets open. He's a natural separator. He gets open with his because teams have to respect his speed down the field, and he has excellent deceleration, which is an important and very important trait in wide receiver. Deceleration. That's just that ability to slam on the brakes. That gives you your separation as well, because once a corner believes that you're going verticals, he's already turned his hips and he's going up the field. If you slam on the brakes, he doesn't have. Most corners do not have that deceleration and that change of direction to keep up with you. You already have your 3 or 4 yards of separation. The ball is coming right to you. He has all of that. He also adds the element of special teams where he can be a punt return. That again goes into the run after the catch ability. This is a guy in the right scheme, in the right situation. He can have a Ladd McConkey impact. That's like the comp for him, but you can see the type of he's similar players, but you can see that's the type of impact that he can have on the offense. I don't see a ton of drawbacks. Sometimes you may want the length. I mean, you don't want him in contested catch situations, but with a guy like him, you don't expect him to be in those type of situations. So I'm not expecting him to be like your wide receiver one, but if you're adding him to your room, I think he'd be an excellent complementary receiver.
So I thought you did that really well, because now I'm convinced that Buffalo should draft Noel in round 1. Like I'm looking at him and I'm like, okay, so those first 3 guys are probably off the board by the time Buffalo picks. Mm-hmm. We need a downfield separator, right? We need somebody that can beat press man coverage.
Yeah.
If the receiver can beat press man, that's the missing link on Buffalo's offense.
Yeah. Josh Allen cannot overthrow this guy.
I like hearing that.
I think of the 3 slots that we've kind of talked about, or 3 primary slots, I think he's got the best deep ball ability. I think more than Bird and Ibuka, he really has a lot of. They took a lot of vertical shots with him, and I think that kind of sets him apart, skill set wise.
EJ, does the competition level for a wide receiver deter you? Because out of the top 4 receivers, Iowa State doesn't necessarily belong in the same conversation as Arizona, Missouri, or Texas.
Yeah, that's true. As far as the level of competition, they played Iowa. I watched them against Iowa, Baylor, and Kansas State. They played a variety of coverages to him, and he played with some corners that could run with him. I believe that only thing that's probably that'll be an adjustment for him is like the play strength of the NFL corners, because I believe his speed and his natural athletic traits, they're NFL caliber. So I don't worry about that at all. All I worry about is the strength aspect. Somebody may get jammed at the line of scrimmage, and he'll have to get used to that type of play strength and get past that. But I believe that just comes with reps and development. So as far as like who they played, not really, because like the traits are still there. The traits are still the traits. He's going to be a 4-3 athlete against whoever's lined up in front of him. So I don't weigh that as much with him in this situation.
Okay. And then EJ, like I remember doing the running back episode with you, and I remembered that you favored explosiveness in your running backs.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm analyzing your wide receiver board.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you value speed and explosiveness in your wide receivers too.
Oh, yeah. If they got it, I'll take it all day long. I do, but I do value. You need the skill aspect of it, because if it was just speed and explosiveness, I'd have Dante Thornton wide receiver 1. But you need a certain skill level as well. You got, and because when I speak, well, Dante Thornton, this is a guy, he's not on my list, but I've watched him for 2 years already, so I know what his deal is. But he's all types of speed and all types of explosive, all types of size and all that. But it's a one-trick pony at this point in his career. He's a one-trick pony. You need a deep threat. He's going to be drafted as a deep threat, and he's going to be a very good one. How he develops his game going beyond that, we don't know yet. But the difference between a player like him and a player like who we're about to talk about next, Jaden Higgins. Thornton is the more athletic of the two, but Jaden Higgins is a far more polished receiver. And we see the polished receivers, they last in the NFL. They have success and they last. Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, they last in the NFL, and they do that for a reason. It's not because of their physical traits. It's because they know exactly what coverage they're seeing. They know exactly how to beat a certain what release beats a certain coverage, how to shut off their route against man or zone. So it's a skill, it's a mental thing. Though I do value that in wide receivers as well. So as much of both the receivers that have as much as both aspects as possible, I try to blend that together and get my list out of that.
Good. So Durst, it's really interesting because you have Higgins, Manor, and Harris as your next 3, and you're even with EJ on Higgins, but you're higher on Manor and higher on Harris. So do you want to talk about all 3 of those guys as to what you like about them?
Sure. So I guess we'll start off with Higgins. He was my wide receiver. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but I don't have Travis Hunter in this rankings. I consider him more of a corner first. Love the idea of being able to get a 2-for-1 discount at the top of the draft there. And to me, it's kind of like, you went and bought a truck and they said, we're going to throw in a jet ski there. So have a little bit of fun with this. I think the team's going to have a lot of fun with Travis Hunter as a package wide receiver. But because of that, I have Higgins as my wide receiver 5. So I think depending on how teams classify Ted McMillan, and EJ alluded to it earlier that we might want to move him around. We might want to see him more as a big slot in for certain teams. But because of that, Higgins might be the best prototypical X. So to me, he's tested extremely well. He's a big receiver. He's about as sure-handed as it comes. He only had 7 career drops. He's really good contested catch ability. For his career, he's over 55%. Athleticism, size, wingspan. My comp for him was Michael Pittman. Now, to me, Michael Pittman is a top of the 2nd round pick, and he is a probably low-end wide receiver 1 for a team. So I think that's probably most likely what we're going to get out of Higgins. But because of his X potential, I have him as my wide receiver 5. Going on to Elamanor, he's very similar. Now I'm a little. He tested a little faster than I expected. My comp for Elamanor, I'm having trouble with his name there. My comp for him was to Alshon Jeffrey. I thought he did it more with size and physicality and didn't have a lot of separation quickness, but he tested pretty good. So probably need to go back to the tape and just kind of make sure I'm not missing some more athleticism there than I thought he had. Not that Alshon Jeffrey was a bad athlete at all. But he's very good at the catch point. I really wish he played every game like he did against Travis Hunter that second half in 2023. Though he might be a top 10, top 20 pick if he played every game just like that. Let's see, who was the third one we were talking about? Trey Harris. So Trey Harris is a little bit of an older prospect, and because of that, I got to take that a little bit in consideration. It's not so much about the second contract or the third contract. It's the fact that he wasn't dominating as a freshman. I like to see people like, those that really like college football. They saw Ryan Williams, they saw Jeremiah Smith, they saw what it could look like when people could come in right out of high school and dominate. And that wasn't Trey Smith. Take him a little while to get going. There's some concerns about the Ole Miss offense maybe inflating some stats. But I really paid attention to when he was like one-on-one as an outside wide receiver. I like to move him around quite a bit, but he can definitely play as an X, at least on occasion. He's got the ability to be a little bursty after the catch. I've seen him go up in the air and make the circus catch over a defender or two. So yeah, I really like Trey Harris. I think he's got a pretty safe floor. I think I might be a little higher than consensus on him. Where I got him, wide receiver 7.
Yeah. So I think where you have him is average. I've seen people that have a first-round grade on Harris, and he's up there like higher than Ibuka or higher than Noel, right? I've seen people with him that high, but that's definitely not consensus. And I think it really just comes down to, as an evaluator, are you like, some people may favor traits, some people may favor explosiveness. I think EJ said you want to see it on the field as well. And I think that can, like, what somebody prefers tends to be why they would rank somebody higher or lower. Being in my seat, that's what fascinates me about this, is I respect both of your evaluations, right? And it's really just making sure that we understand maybe like what is the player when you draft him. EJ, you're higher on Bond and Horton. You want to tell us why you have both of those guys in your top 10?
Yeah, I think Isaiah Bond is going to be a better pro than he was at the collegiate level. I think the role for him would be to, I think he's another I call him movement Z, or a vertical slot. He's the guy. He's him and Luther Burden. I think they are the best 2 wide receivers after the catch. He's not the biggest or the strongest type of guy, but he is extremely fast, very similar to Xavier Worthy from last year. He has true deep speed. So the minute he steps on the field, cornerbacks have to respect his speed now, and that changes how they cover him, and that changes the coverages that the defensive coordinator plays against him when he's on the field. So he's having an impact the minute he steps on the field, just being fast. He's a guy that he can take a screen to the house and he'll make 5 people miss while doing that. I really like him, and I really like him after the catch with the ball in his hands. Your gadget plays, your jet sweeps, your orbit swing pass, all of that. He can do all that, and he'll get you a lot of yards after the catch. You can use him in your quick game with the gadget plays and all that, and he'll get you production there. And if they load up on that, he's a guy that you'll send him right past your safeties, and he'll get 7 on you. This is a guy you're going to see him at some point in the season, his rookie season, you're going to see him have a 50, 60-yard bomb or something like that, because he's just that type of straight line athlete and that type of runner. He's a dangerous player. I like receivers that are dangerous. Doesn't matter whether it's dangerous as a route runner, dangerous as a deep threat, dangerous with the ball in your hands. I just want you to be dangerous, because I need the defense to pay attention to you while I'm doing something on the other side of the field that's really going to hurt you. He's that type of player. He's that type of player where you can use schematically as a weapon. That's why I like Isaiah. I think he's going to be a much better pro than he was at the collegiate level.
And then how about Torrey Horton?
I like this guy. I was surprised he ran the 4.41 coming off a knee injury, coming off a season-ending knee injury, which tells me that he probably could have ran a little bit faster. But this is a guy 6'4", sub 200, like around the 190s range. But he's a guy that he's very fluid in his motions. When you see him at the top of his stems, you see his break. His break is very sudden and very fluid, and you see how the defenders react. They can't keep up. He has good body control, decent hands, and he has speed to get down the field. He's a complete package receiver. I believe he can threaten at all 3 levels of the field. He's just not. He's not that supernova athlete that maybe some of the top guys are, but he's a very, very solid player. You look at him, and I get Dontavian Wicks vibes. I think he has a little bit more juice as a straight line runner than Dontavian Wicks does, but he's that type of player where he's a very shifty route runner. You put him in the slot, you put him as a Z, you put him in a stack formation where he gets a free release. He's going to make somebody miss at the top of a route and he's going to get open. That's his game right there. And the thing about him, another receiver, he's good after the catch, and I like that about my receivers. Plus he has a size where he can. You would like to see him win contested catch situations a little bit more, but he separates, so you don't expect him to be in those type of situations. But he has shown the ability to high point the ball and track the ball down the field. So yeah, I think he'll be a good addition to anybody's wide receiver room.
Okay, and Durst, you're higher on both TCU wide receivers, Jack Bech and Savion Williams. You want to talk about them for a minute? And Durst, you're on mute.
No.
Durst, you.
Sorry, the dog was barking, so I put the mute on there. But real quick, if I could talk about Troy Horton, what I wrote down was that he works the sideline like a pro.
Mm-hmm.
He snagged some near misses and was able to get not just 1 foot down, but both feet down. Mm-hmm. I saw him play in a couple of inclemental weather kind of games, but his ability to work the sideline I thought was amazing. So I really like him. And if you may not remember this, but a few weeks ago when I was drafting for the Dolphins, I actually picked Bond in the 2nd round. So I'm pretty high on Bond too. I wrote down he's the best accelerator in this draft. I think his play speed is actually better than Golden. I mean, when it comes to actual play speed on the field, he can race angles. So I totally agree with EJ that he may end up being a better pro than NFL or than the college player. When it comes to Jack Bech, yeah, I do think that maybe the Twitter community got a little bit high on him after the story that happened that came out, and every fan base really loves Jack Bech, and of course he had the awesome Senior Bowl, but he's got some skill too. He actually led LSU in receiving as a true freshman. And that was a team that had Malik Neighbors. That's a team that had Trey Palmer. That's a team that had Keyshawn Boutte. That's a team that had I just messed up his name there.
Yeah, Brian Thomas.
So, Brian Thomas, that's the guy. Yeah. So this was a talented guy. Now, he was a tight end when he started off at LSU. He had some injuries after going to TCU from LSU. But he really had a breakout season last year, put it all together. I do think that he probably won't stay as an outside receiver, probably will move around, might be in a little bit of a Cooper Kupp role. I alluded to it a couple of minutes ago, but he's the other guy who I think is in contention for being the best blocking wide receiver. So if you want to put him in condensed packages, if you want to have him as almost a slot tight end type of hybrid, I think he can do all that. I think he's also maybe the best in not just contested catches, but basically drawing the foul and making the play. He really can make the catch when he's like between two defenders and they're squeezing him and they hit him right as he's making the catch. I think he's got really good hands when it comes to that. I think he's skilled as a technician, as a route runner. I'm not so sure he's a really fast guy or if he's just like super snappy out of his breaks like some of these guys are. But I think he's got a really high floor, especially just as a move the chains pass catcher. Now, Savion Williams, I mean, he's a little bit of a lottery ticket. To me, I like to break down my wide receivers into X receivers, or at least potential ones, slot guys, big slot guys, gadget guys. He's the gadget guy. He's the guy that can play a little bit of wildcat. He can play a little bit of running back. He can play a little bit of X receiver. You can manufacture touches behind the line of scrimmage for him. He, at the minimum, will be a gadget guy along the lines of one of the common comparisons is Cordero Patterson. I think that's probably his floor. I think he's got the potential to develop this X receiver game, but the problem is he's already been in the college football for 5 years. So if he hasn't done it yet, is he really going to do in the NFL? I think he leads the college football, or at least the draft eligible receivers, in or contested catch percentage. So while he has got a lot of drops, and some people question his hands, I get it. Some concentration drops. That's usually like easy layups, but he's also got about like I think a 75% contested catch percentage through his career. So yeah, he's just really athletic, really big. I kind of say he's what we wanted Quentin Johnson to be, but he's just not there yet. He's a project, and it might take a few years before he gets there.
Yep.
Thank you, Newt. I see the thing there. Newt with the text.
Yeah. So if you haven't watched Newt's podcast, Newt is on Thursdays at 9 p.m. with Owen. So Newt, it's good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. So EJ, your hire, I'm looking. So EJ, do you want to do Jalen Royals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jalen Royals, 6 foot 205 out of Utah State. I watched him against Boise State. I wrote down when I first watched him, I wrote down he's your prototype quick game receiver. Now, when I say quick game, that is your quick slants, your RPO game, your mesh concept, plays where the quarterback is getting the ball out of his hands really quick. He'll work that to perfection because he's a guy that he's not necessarily a wow athlete type of guy, but he has quickness and he has enough speed to where he can get open very fast. So he'll, like, if a quarterback goes on a 3-step drop, he'll make sure he's open and he catches the ball and he gets yards after the catch with it. He plays with a sense of contact balance and power that wide receivers usually don't have. So he's making the first guy miss, but more than likely they're just bouncing off of him. He has excellent quickness. He's another guy where he's going to dominate in the slot if he has two reliable threats on the outside of him. If he's the main focus, you don't want him to be the main focus of your offense. But if he is a complementary piece, then he's gonna do a lot of harm to you. It's you can have an easy Amon-Ra St. Brown comp to him. He plays that sort of game. He's that sort of body type. And he has those sorts of physical traits, and that's how you're gonna want to use him at the next level. I like him. I like him attacking the short, the intermediate sides of the field. I don't like him as a deep threat or anything like that, really. But he's what you see is what you get. He's a very solid player. He's an immediate transition. Like you can put him in the slot game 1, week 1, and he's gonna be productive for you.
So let me ask you, EJ, about him. I would say that this is a guy that I probably am least confident on my valuation. Part of it is just I didn't have access to a whole lot, all 22 on him, and I was hoping to find the Utah game in all 22. I was hoping to find the USC game in all 22, and it just wasn't really as much there. Now he was also injured last year, so it's when you saw a few games, and I didn't go back and watch his 2023 tape other than some highlights. But what I wrote down is I saw a lot of like slow releases and then fast after the catch. This is the way I saw it. He's got a lot of like wide alignment in college, but I kind of agree he might be better in the slot. I comped him to Michael Gallup. I thought that's a similar size. What do you think about all that?
I hate the offense that Utah State ran. Is that same Tennessee offense where they got the super wide splits, and that doesn't work in the NFL. The field is just not set up that way. I thought he would be a little bit better in the slot. I think he has the quickness. I can see a little bit. I actually comped Michael Gallup to Torrey Horton. I mean, I know it's the same school and all of that, but I think I comped Michael Gallup to Torrey Horton. But I can see that a little bit with Jalen Royals as well. He's that type of thick build. He's that type of. I like his strength at the catch point. He's one of those guys that they don't wait for the ball to come to him. He just snatches it out of the air, and it doesn't matter if a guy is hanging on him or not. He can snatch the ball out of the air. I like the strength that he plays with. I think he's like when he's running his intermediate routes, he's using his tempo, because he's not just gonna run by a guy, so he's got to use his tempo. He's got to sell that he's going vertical, then he's got to break the route off. So I can see him using his tempo. But I like his quickness as well, his short area quickness. That's what helps him get open, like on the underneath routes and all of that. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that.
Cool. And Durst, I like it when you guys like just start asking questions to each other, because that takes a little bit of time to get to know, hey, what can I ask the other guy? And this is the first time you two have been in the same room, quote unquote. So Durst, you've got two guys, Xavier Restrepo and Dante Thornton. You want to talk about them for a minute?
Sure. So, we always start a little bit on the Dante Thornton, but to me, he's the premier deep threat in this class. Now, is he a one-trick pony? Absolutely. But some teams need that trick. It's a little easier to find a slot receiver. It's pretty easy to find, an occasional, Z, or, a guy that maybe can be the sacrificial X receiver that just kind of draws the coverage over there. But there's really not many people who have his level of speed. Now, it's not only speed that he has, but he's got, so it's Marcus Mosher that tweeted this out. I want to make sure I got this correct, but he's the only receiver 6'4" or taller to run under a 4.35 second 40 at the combine since 2020. Since 2003. So we're talking over 20 years. So basically, he's got the combination of not just speed, not just like a Jalen Hyatt speed, but he's got the speed along with the length. I think he can track the ball. He's got the size, and some basically he's a jumbo-sized Jalen Hyatt, which I think he might go a little higher than this. So he's got maybe a little bit of a Christian Watson, type of potential. However, my comp for him was Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think that's a little bit more realistic. So then we get to Restrepo. So Restrepo, he's got the single season record for reception yardage with Miami, the University of Miami. Think how many good receivers they've had as a junior, and then somehow kind of had a better season last year once Ward came there. So, so a lot of his, his raw stats were down a little bit, but a lot of his advanced analytics actually went up a little bit. So he's kind of what you see is what you got. He is a pure slot. Not everybody wants a pure slot. He's not some teams, they want to be able to move their guys around. So, you want to get Chase, Jamar Chase in the slot every once in a while. You want to get CeeDee Lamb in the slot every once in a while. Those teams may not want just a pure slot that they can't just move to the outside when they move CeeDee Lamb or Chase into the slot. So, but he is a really good slot kind of guy. He's got a very powerful build. So almost a little bit more of a beefed up Christian Kirk. I think Julian Edelman is a pretty good comp for him. Now, I don't really remember Julian Edelman as a college prospect, but once he got got in the NFL, he really developed his body into just a very powerful slot receiver. So I think he can really be a quarterback's best friend, create a lot of easy completions. He's got a lot of body control, a lot of these like falling down catches because the ball might be a little bit behind him or a little too high. So really good concentration on the ball.
Cool. So,
and real quick on Thornton. This guy, he played a little bit heavier last year. Like he usually plays around 214, which speaks to the athleticism that he has, and like the reason why he was one of those freak athletes coming out of high school, because he was another track and field guy. He's a 100-meter dash guy, high jump and long jump. So that's all lower body explosiveness right there. And put that on a legit 6'4" frame. I mean, this guy, he's your ultimate boomer bust. Him and Savion Williams are going to get somebody fired. One either for drafting him or for not drafting him. So those are your two boomer bust players right there.
Okay. So EJ, do you want to take a minute, introduce yourself, and let everybody know who you are and how they can find you?
Yeah, how you doing? I'm EJ. You should know me by now, but you can see in that little corner right there, you see that's my Twitter handle, my X handle, whatever you want to call it. I do film breakdowns on X. I am a independent scout. I do cornerbacks for Draft Guide Rogue Analytics Draft Guide, which is coming soon. Pretty much you get honest evaluation. I don't do hot takes. I don't do all the flares and the fluff and all of that. But I just give you honest evaluation of what's going on in the tape. Pretty much I do all positions. I do a little bit of writing here and there. But pretty much come find me. Enjoy my work.
Cool. Durst, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Durst. You can find me at Durst NFL Draft on Twitter/X. I recently dropped a top 33 wide receiver value board and the feed of just the various film / analytics analysis there.
Cool. So you can follow the channel at NFL Draft Fanatic, no I in Fanatic. It is the same on X and YouTube. And we do, generally speaking, during the week, we do 2 podcasts a day. So 2 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This is the opening act. So Durst and EJ are opening up for Bill and Jacob. And actually, I think, EJ, you're showing up to that one too, right?
Yeah, I can pop in.
Yeah, definitely. So they're going to be breaking down how they grade players. And specifically, I think it's offensive players.
Mm-hmm.
But that's coming at you at 8:30 in about 40 minutes. Every Friday, we do a 32-team mock draft, so the fans that are watching the podcast can draft for their teams. And then on Sundays, we do a war room. So we started with round 1 of the draft on Monday. We're doing rounds 2 and 3 of that draft tomorrow at 7. And then on Sunday, we're going to do rounds 4 and 5 at the same draft. So if you're sick of hearing about the top 100 players, show up on Sunday and you're going to learn some day 3 guys that draft professors like. So the war room means, everybody that's in there can say, I like this guy, I like this guy, I like this guy. And we come to a decision pretty quickly. And then we move on to the next pick. And we will repeat that process for about 75 or 80 picks. That would be rounds 4 and 5. So there's about 40 picks per round in each of those rounds. So daily draft content, can't emphasize that enough. And if you enjoy the content, the best way you can thank us is to hit subscribe on YouTube. Find NFL Draft Fanatic, search Draft Professor. Either one's going to find the channel. Hit that subscribe. You'll be notified of daily draft content, and that helps the channel out a lot. So please and thank you. So EJ, as you look at your wide receiver board, you didn't get to talk about all the guys because once we got outside the top 3, we kind of alternated. Is there any guy that you haven't talked about that you'd like to highlight?
Let's see, who did it? Okay, all right. So I'll run through it real quick. Jaden Higgins, I have on number 5 on my board. I believe him to be, like Durst said, a boundary X receiver. Like the thing about what the boundary X receiver position is, basically schematically, it's the only receiver position on the field where you cannot go in motion and you have to line up on the line of scrimmage every down. What that means is the advantage for the defense. I know exactly where you're going to be at every down, and I can press you whenever I feel like it. So what you need from that position is a guy that first and foremost can get off the line of scrimmage, can get off of press coverage. Second of all, you need somebody that can get open on their own, not with the help of a stack release, not with the help of a passing concept. You need somebody that can create, pretty much in basketball terms, you need somebody that can create their own shot. I believe that to be Jaden Higgins. If he can play that boundary X position, he did it. He actually, at Iowa State, him and Jalen Noel, they alternated between downs. Like sometimes Jalen Noel would be at that boundary X position. Sometimes Jaden Higgins would be inside. But Jaden Higgins has that ability to play there. Not saying that he should play there every time, because, the thing with good receivers, make it easy for him. So give him the stack releases, give him the free releases off the line of scrimmage, put him in motion so the cornerback can't catch up to him. he can play. I believe he can play all three positions on the field. And the 4.47 at the combine, that was surprising. But you go back to the tape, he's a long strider. So with long striders, it doesn't look like they're running fast until they're running by you. That's what he is. He's got a long stride, and I like the body control at that size. He's one of those 6'4" guys. He's fluid in his motions when he's tracking the ball, and he can adjust. He can make adjustments on the ball because there were a lot of passes thrown behind him where he had to make adjustments. He had to scoop it off the ground. He had to get it. He had to climb the ladder and go get it. I like the body control that he has at that size. Alec Iomanner, I looked at him and I was like, this guy could play a Chris Godwin role easy. He's another guy. He would be very effective when he got to legitimate threats, not superstars, but just legitimate threats on the outside, because he is that type of, I say he's a power player. He's him and Jack Beck. They commit OPI all the time and they have no problems with it. Like they'll take a corner and they'll throw him out of the way and say, look, I'm open. And I love that about him because no ref is going to call OPI. So he's the guy I like working from the inside. I like the strength. He has sudden short area quickness. I don't think that he ran a good time at the 40. That's probably going to make him some money, but I think he plays more in the 4 or 5 range. He doesn't top out. His top out isn't 4 speed. Like the acceleration just isn't there. But he has short area quickness. He has short area burst that gets him open on the underneath routes and on the intermediate routes. And so I like the strength and I like the quickness that Alec Iomanner plays with. And he has strong hands. He's very strong at the catch point. Him and Jack Beck, very strong at the catch point. I like the strength that they play with. And Savion Williams, he's just like Durst said, he's a lottery ticket. You're betting on the traits, you're betting on the upside because he is a freak athlete. Like athletically, he's probably one of the best athletes in this draft. But this is the drops, and even when he is making the catches, it's the double catches. I've watched him literally cause an interception because he ran a bad route. Like he rounded off an end breaker when he should have cut it off. He needs polish. He needs a lot of polish. He needs reps. He needs hard coaching. If that happens, then we're watching a Pro Bowl receiver in the making. If that doesn't happen, then we're watching a younger version of Cordarrelle Patterson. Either way, it's fine because he's going to be productive in the league. As a role for him. Either way, that works. But it's just what Savion Williams are we going to get? But yeah, that's pretty much all I had on all those guys.
So Durst, is there any wide receivers that you didn't have a chance to talk about that you'd like to point out? Anything that you like about them or why they are where they are in your board?
I'll tell you what, if you don't mind for a second, I think this is a guy that is so fun that I don't think he's on either of our boards on this in our top 10s. But let me take a second to talk a little bit about Tez Johnson. So I sent out a tweet the other day, just got through watching Tez Johnson versus Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. Combined, 14 of their 15 DBs will play in the NFL, and Tez cooked all of them. Now, he's got outlier size, like 156, I think is what he measured in, but rare quickness and lateral agility. I have him as basically like a package player, like a high-impact package player. He comes off the bench. You can't trust him to block. Don't ever ask him to do that. But then a guy that will be a focus of the offense and the defense when he's in the game. But I think you want to limit his snaps. EJ, what do you think about Tez?
I like him. He is just, what do you do with that size? What do you do? Like, what's the precedent for somebody that size being successful for a long period of time? As far as he's a guy, I don't think he plays to his time speed. I think he plays faster than that 4.5 he ran. More it's like he's quick and he has excellent acceleration. He'll get open. I think he can get open at the NFL level. I think he can be productive at the NFL level. But then somebody's going to tackle you eventually. Somebody and I don't know how long he's going to last. I don't know how healthy he's going to be. But I think he's an excellent route runner. I think he's super quick. I think he can get open. but it's just I don't. The size is a gamble. The size is a complete outlier, so we don't know what's going to go on with that.
Yeah, I was sitting with a group of people at the combine, and when Tez ran his 40, we were just looking at each other and we said, "Is that day 3 or undraftable?" That was a conversation, and it was funny because where I sat for the combine, one of the guys that was sitting like 3 rows in front of me, his name is Jay. Now, Jay and I had connected on Twitter, and he was coming on a Draft Professor podcast, but we had never met in person, right? So the same way I found you guys on Twitter, I found Jay on Twitter too, right? We were sitting right near each other at the combine. It was hysterical, and we ended up going out to dinner later that night and stuff like that. But that was the conversation. Like Bill Carroll was there, Jay was there, and then a few other people, and we're like, okay, so I think Tez Johnson gets drafted. And I have a Calvin Austin theory of wide receivers. So I'm about to impart on the draft world my wisdom. So my opinion is that a receiver like that is worth the risk on day 3, but because he's a limited role. Anytime you have a receiver where, like, for example, like even Savion Williams, there might be more upside with Savion, but the difference to me between spending a round 3 and a round 4 pick on Savion Williams is huge. I'll take the risk in round 4. I don't know if I want the risk in round 3.
That makes sense.
Meaning the risk doesn't match what I need right now. Or to me, if I draft a receiver in rounds 1 through 3, I want them to be able to play 25% of the snaps their rookie year on offense. And if you can't do that with the upside to develop into something better, meaning if you have to stash Savion Williams as wide receiver 6 until he gets an off season to work on things,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it until round 4.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's a draft theory I have. That doesn't mean that NFL GMs listen to me. That's the theory I have for kind of predicting as I look at everybody's boards and listen to what the player is or is not. I have a feeling like a Tez Johnson and Savion Williams are actually going to be day 3 picks.
I can see that. That makes sense.
And then I definitely liked hearing about Dante Thornton. So Durst, I think having Thornton at 14 is the highest I've seen him, but I know exactly why you put him there, kind of thing. So from that standpoint, I definitely enjoy, and also I thought both of you guys did a really good job on Torrey Horton. I don't know that I had seen him in the top 10. Maybe Newt had him in the top 10, but other than that, this was definitely the highest I had heard or seen him. So it's good to see different evaluations on the players. I appreciate that. That's the brand of the channel I want to create is having that. So I appreciate both of you guys being able to kind of help out.
Yeah, Horton and Royals both had, season-ending injuries that kind of affected them. Of course, Royals got to redeem himself at the Senior Bowl, and then I don't think Horton made it there. They both had good NFL combines, though. But I do think it's a little bit of outside, out of mind on those two toward the end of the season.
Okay, so apparently I'm on the clock for Will's Steeler Fury draft. So Will is another draft professor. Accidental Zen on X. So feel free to give him a follow, everybody. But apparently I'm on the clock for the Raiders in round 4. So within the next hour, I have to make a pick.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah, in one of the 4 simultaneous drafts I'm in.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So we do have another podcast in 25 minutes. So we are going to close this one down, and we will see you in 25 minutes. For EJ, Durst, the 48 podcasters at the Draft Professor, and myself, thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on a podcast again in 30 minutes.
Later.